Oh, well, mine's the worst version, probably. So we'll start with mine, and then Tom can show a better version of it. So my sister got me Robocop 2 for Christmas, gave her a bunch of movies that I wanted to get, and she got me this. For some reason, it will not play on my Xbox. It was like, yeah, put a disc in there, and then we can read it. It's like, what the fuck you think I did? And then I go put it in the Blu-ray out in the living room. Works just fine. But watched it today, finally. And I figured Tom will show his first, and we can get into it and stuff. But there you go. So that was my first time watching.
Yeah, I have, of course, the older versions and the new versions. And fuck Shit Factory, I still got it with all the goodies, but I'm not going to show them off because fuck Shit Factory.
Yeah.
That is all.
Yes. So, Rook, I know you could be hit and miss with the audience on some movies, but you did like RoboCop.
Right. Yeah, I loved RoboCop.
How did you feel about? Yes, you
loved RoboCop 1.
How did you feel about part 2 here?
The way he's saying it, we can already tell where this is going.
Yeah,
well, it's like there's things in RoboCop 2 that I like, but overall, I feel like it was a worse movie. Like I loved the little kid being like a villain. That was kind of funny. The beginning, I think I liked the beginning of RoboCop 2 the most, like the first 10 minutes or so, where it's like showing their different like news stuff and the people in the town, and they're breaking into the gun store and they're having the huge shootout thing. And when you first see RoboCop, like I think that's all pretty good. And you know, like I said, the little kid as a villain's pretty funny. I find the little actor they have for him is good. He's the little like villain of the movie. That was a clever thing. Yeah, there's some parts of the movie that drag for me, especially toward the end. It feels like a very drawn out, almost Man of Steel type of fight, but with these effects, like where they're hitting each other a lot, and it's just like just shooting at each other, and it just gets kind of boring after a bit.
He said Man of Steel fight, Tom. Man of Steel fight.
Well, they're just kind of hitting each other a lot, and it's just kind of like, okay, like I guess you're hurting each other. I guess you're both robots.
It's so funny to say that because Frank Miller fucking wrote the story, or at least like parts of it, for whatever was left. But it was like the concept that he came up with, and then like for what was not used overall, his vision was used into like a comic book, for what I remember. But I saw this once. I need to rewatch it, but I need to get 4K because I only have the Blu-ray from Shout or Shit Factory, as people are calling it now.
Yeah, so 4K is fine.
It might take a hot take, or is that what is?
You want to know what's wrong with RoboCop 2?
Sure.
It's not RoboCop 1. Because nothing can be as good as RoboCop 1.
Well, of course not.
Other than that, it is fucking every goddamn thing I wanted when I was 10 fucking years old.
Right.
This was like my fucking favorite movie until I saw Ninja Turtles. Or vice versa, whichever. I don't even remember. It don't fucking matter. RoboCop 2 rocked.
I love it.
Things that are kind of whatever about it, but I don't give a fuck.
Me neither.
You know what's great about it?
It's not great.
3.
It's not part 3, exactly.
Well, I mean, I guess so. Like Kane, I think is a lame villain, especially compared to the first guy.
What?
Like,
Kane is great.
How?
Yeah, he's not Clarence Bartiger. Nobody can be Clarence Bartiger.
Great at all. He's forgettable.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, you did it again, rookie.
How is he great?
Kane?
Yeah.
He's like a fucking legend. He's the only reason he's just not Clarence. That's all. He's actually like the opposite of Clarence. Like Clarence is all like badass and killing everybody left and right. Fucking he's all hippy dippy cool dude, and then it's a kid and everybody else who are more brutal than he is, really.
Yeah,
when he's RoboCop 2, he's just fucking vicious. Like I have that t-shirt of like when you said that about the fight, I'm like, I would never ever compare that fight
me neither.
to Man of Steel. Because in that fight alone, like I have a t-shirt of that. And I posted it after I got done watching this movie. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that had to be some of the best go motion work ever in a movie. The RoboCop 2 shit. Like, it is awesome. Like, there's only a few shots where you can tell that Robo's a doll. Like, it's still pretty goddamn good.
It's good. It's quality stop motion. I'll give it credit on that, but it was boring to watch after a while. It's just I wasn't invested, and honestly, the movie throughout doesn't focus enough on RoboCop. I feel it's Mike Murphy as the character. He's just he's around.
I'll give Rookie this.
It's not really. I'd say it's not as focused. There's not as much.
Well, he already had his bit.
I'll give Rookie this. I liked it more when the third act came along. I like the movie overall, but I didn't care for the first two acts nearly as much. It was when the third act came along, I was like, okay, I can kind of.
I'm the opposite. I'm the opposite with that. I think
really
boring by the third act to me.
Well, we don't need much more for Murphy because we've already had his arc. We get a little bit with his kid and his wife, where he finally lets his wife go. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I get it. That's probably the parts that most fans have an issue with because there's some people who feel like they didn't adhere to the way the first film ended. And I'm like, I don't know. He still goes by Murphy, and he still has a lot of his humanity because it's when they feed him full of that bullshit when he goes off the rails again, like seeing, because that at that point he has to kind of reclaim his humanity again, and that's really all you need. You don't need a whole nother arc again, right? Like, I mean, what's he gonna do?
Well,
I mean, at this point, I mean, he's fucking RoboCop. He can't fuck his wife.
So who would you say?
Really? So how's he gonna be a dad again?
Well, I feel like if you're a creative enough writer, you can make something work. Especially,
I don't think an audience could have bought RoboDad.
Unless you can build a mechanism under the waves
of the movie.
It's still technically RoboCop, but see, here's the thing, and this is where I get where some people have issues, is because the first movie is a biting satire that is a direct take on of the corporate 80s mentality and the industrial complex.
Yeah.
The military industrial complex. This film is a comic book movie. And it's written by Frank Miller.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to understand, like, once you get to a sequel of a comic book movie, your hero can't really do much different shit other than, so that's why they concentrate a little bit more on the villains. So you have your two main villains and 2.3 main villains. You have the cop who's bad, who he gets cut up by everybody in that one scene, right? You have Kane, who's the main villain, but he's not really the main villain, only just because he becomes RoboCop 2. As you pointed out, the main villain here is the kids. Mm-hmm. The kid, right? And the whole reason the kid's in this movie is because they realized kids loved RoboCop.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like, okay, we gotta put a kid in here somehow. And then they also have to kind of work with it being an R-rated film at the same time. So in a way, I think they were trying to show kids, because they knew kids were going to go see this movie, that violence is a bad thing. Because there was a lot of parents who were pissed off at the first movie because they were like, this movie wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't R-rated because it's the kind of shit my kid loves. I wish you wouldn't watch RoboCop 20 fucking times a day, says my mom in 1988. Anyway.
Well, I assume that the scene where they're trying to figure out what they want to
like the violence and what happens to the kid and stuff like that. But yeah.
I assume
and the drugs, say no to drugs thing was really big in this era too. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. I figure like at the meeting when they're like, what should we put in his head? And they're like, he should go visit orphanages and go say hi to more children and go to the blood bank and blah, blah, blah. I assume that has something to do with the addressing people's issues with the movie. It wasn't safe enough for families or something.
Bad words lead to bad feelings.
Yeah. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I guess so. Things that I liked. Another scene I liked was the whole team of baseball children, the whole children's baseball team beating the crap out of the owners and robbing the place. That was hilarious. Like in the beginning, the beginning I think is the best part, where they're showing the town and the state of it, where like somebody robs somebody, then they get beaten up and robbed, and they get beaten up and robbed, and it's just this like horrible state. They just go into a gun place and can just get access to all these weapons. Like it's just this whole total shithole of a town. Continuing from the first one, where they're trying to replace it with a new city, right? It's
New Detroit.
New Detroit. So like that aspect's good. I'm okay with them not focusing on RoboCop. I just feel like I guess Kane felt unnecessary, and maybe if it was like if the little kid was actually supposed to be, I don't know, more of it. I feel like they could have done more. The lady too that was working with the OCP, well, she's kind of a villain too with it, right? It's like trying to override him and
Yeah, she's the corporate
putting all these
villain,
other people
right?
through it. So there's that element.
She's the corporate villain, though. Yeah, but like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I like the actor, Tom Noonan.
Because I just watched the movie, and it's like Kane is barely a factor as far as like his presence or anything he's doing. It just, he's like, yeah, I'm here, and then the girl shoots him, and then they all take turns trying to take him apart, and then he just kind of gets killed later, and then he becomes the consciousness of the robot, and he's really barely anything in the movie. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like
I reject your hypothesis.
If you had the kid even like almost get killed, and then have the kid as the robot or something,
that would have been stupid.
I don't know. But this was smart with him.
It works. It's very much like the comic book. It's very much like.
How can you tell me that that's stupid?
Because
then that isn't.
Nobody wants to see Robocop fight a robot kid.
I don't know.
No, that would
for the same reason they didn't turn Anne into a RoboCop.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
because that's the whole point. Is like, okay, like you have. Why did they never could get any of the other RoboCops to work? And that's kind of the whole point of this movie, right? They try and they try and they try and they try and they keep fucking killing themselves, or they kill somebody else, or
Iron Man 2.
Yeah, same kind of thing. So basically, what happens is they have to find a mind that can deal with it, and like that's what they're pointing out with Alex Murphy is he's like the perfect candidate. Like the chances of finding another perfect candidate like that again are next to nothing. So the closest thing you can get is somebody who has a god complex. Who has a god complex? Kane.
Yeah.
I don't agree with the conclusion that it has to be a guy with a god complex.
Well, it's either one way or another. You either find somebody who's a perfect cop with a Christian background and all this kind of shit that she brings up in that scene, or you find somebody like that, because they tried it. They showed us in the movie. Everybody else just went nuts. Like their brain couldn't hack it, right? For whatever reason, there was something wrong with it. So like you have to have somebody who can either be the best of us, or somebody who's that narcissistic that they can't die. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the way they set it up to me, is like they're showing us that all the other people they want to die. They don't want to be like this. Like,
yeah.
Murphy, on the other hand, he has this thing about him that made him such a great cop that it's what keeps him going, right? And that's kind of where like I feel like they didn't really need to dive into his struggle again or anything. Like we already got that. We don't need that again.
I wasn't asking. I wouldn't say to do his struggle again.
But what else would you do with him in this movie that they didn't do already? I guess is my question then. Because you keep saying he's not the focal point. Well, then what is the problem?
He doesn't have to be the focal point. I'm just saying that it felt like there wasn't a focal point at all for a main character necessarily. We're just kind of going back and forth between all these different people, I guess, and it's just kind of seeing what happens. I don't know. When he gets, I figured when he was getting dismantled, I figured if there is humanity there in him, that there'd be some type of reaction. I don't know. I was getting the impression when after he zapped himself, essentially, like that he's trying to regain more of his humanity if he can. Like they keep on
if you're not paying attention,
they kept on reiterating that he is a machine, a robot.
Here's the thing, and I think a lot of people miss this in the movie. When he resets himself after he zaps himself, watch the movie again and look. It says his objectives are all gone. Not even the first 4 are there anymore. So everything he is doing from that point on is his choice.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think, miss that in the movie, because that's the thing, is all this whole time with him being RoboCop is he was always following his directives, right? He was always following his directives regardless. And that's kind of where the end of the first movie is, like he kind of is the first time he said he's able to break his directives and do what he has to do kind of thing. But even then he can't, right? Because that's the whole point, is he has to wait for the old man, for Ronnie Cox's character to be fired by the old man to kill him, right? So it's the same kind of thing here up until the point where now nobody can control him, because that's the thing. OCP was trying to regain control over him again. And by doing that, they also threw in all these other fucking things in there she did so she could make him malfunction and make RoboCop 2. It's kind of the reversal of what Ronnie Cox's character did with what's-his-face in the first movie who created RoboCop, right? Mm-hmm. Like she's trying to sabotage RoboCop so that she can... Actually, it's the same. Sorry, it's the same exact thing that Ronnie Cox is doing. She's trying to sabotage RoboCop so RoboCop 2 can be the main thing, right? So that's where his struggle comes into play here, because otherwise he'd just be functioning as normal, right? But then once he does that, from that point on, that's all Murphy. That's Murphy doing his own thing. So that's why I don't like it when people are like, well, he's not Murphy anymore. He's back to just being a robot again. It's like, no, he's not. We have that whole scene where he's filled with all these, commands and stuff that he can't follow because they contradict each other left and right. So he literally just goes nuts.
Well,
right.
And
then at that point, once he zaps himself, he is completely free of any control. He's completely free reign. Free will. Thank you.
Yes.
Right. My point was more that seems to be just glazed over. That's him with his own free will.
And it should. And I agree with you. It should be more. It should be more poignant in the film.
Like
I agree with you there.
That's my point, was that it's not treated like he did anything special, or like he can choose to do what he wants to. It's just it's just right back into the action of what's going on.
I get you, and I agree with you there.
So that's part of what I meant by like not following him as much, because this, with what we see in the film, what they set up to have happen, and he clears his objectives, like you said, like,
and that's fair. That could have been lost in the editing or something. Who knows?
Yeah. And I mean, and with his connection with his partner, she's just kind of around. I don't know. There's something.
She does feel she's very underutilized in this one. Yeah,
on to the movie. That's like, I don't know why you're here. Like, you were there in the first film. You're his partner.
It almost feels like the script was written in a way to where if they couldn't get her back, they could just write it out.
They could probably, which I think it might have benefited. I don't know. She didn't really add anything to the film. There's just, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
maybe the reason why I feel like it wasn't that good is that it feels maybe bloated with a lot of ideas here, with the different villains, the corporate villain chick, you got Kane, you got the little kid, you got the crooked cop, you've got
the problem with this film. I guess I'll agree with you on one thing, because here's the issue with this film: is this movie is only part of what was supposed to happen in part 3, because it was supposed to set up part 3, and then the studio rewrote part 3, and it only has like a third or so of the story in it that it was supposed to be, because like 2 and 3 were a little bit different in their original conceptions, because Frank Miller wrote the original scripts for 2 and 3 at the same time. They were going to shoot them back to back and all that business. Well, then part 2 didn't do as well as they were hoping. It only did less than half of the first film, or half of the first film. So they're like, oh crap. Well, and Orion was in really rough shape, so they went ahead with part 3, and it actually sat on a shelf for a while, but they rewrote the shit out of it, made it PG-13 and all this other business. So you can actually read the comic versions of Miller's original story. I think you might appreciate it a little bit more, because it is a bit grittier, and especially part 3 takes it into a bit different direction, and you can kind of see where they're wrapping it around all together and how it all works together. Because Nuke is still a big deal in part 3 as well. But in the movie, it's not. Like, they just totally freaking forget about it. See, because that's the whole thing, is like Nuke plays such a bigger role in the story, and that may have been also kind of lost in the mix, because like you have, like, they're trying to build Delta City, right, at the same time, and Nuke is like the newest drug that is, it's one of the most potent. What's weird is because it almost, even though heroin had been around forever, it almost feels like it corresponded with like the whole heroin opioid kind of rising we had in the last 10, 20 years here, if you can kind of compare it to that. Yeah, because of how addictive it was.
What's the only issue with Nuke is that it's addictive, because there didn't seem to be like the physical side effects on everybody. I mean,
I'm sure you could OD on it.
The crooked cop was like the main one, where he was kind of like, oh man, I'm trying to really get off of that. And the girl, where she's like, oh, I'm going to listen to you because I'm going to bend over to Nuke. But it didn't seem like there was like the same amount of like
I'm sure you could OD from it because of the way they kind of, they don't really express that, but like it's all chemical, right? It's chemical based, because you have that scene with Kane where he's like, he takes the nuke and he's like, you need to cut it, it's got too much whatever, and it's like making my teeth, whatever. Like, so clearly it's got a bunch of chemicals in it. So I'm sure if you take too much of it, you will die.
You don't. Okay, take too much. I got you. But
it's just so addictive. That's the point, is you can't get away from it. Like, that's the whole thing. Yeah.
So this might be one of the issues.
We lost Greg.
He'll probably be back. He had internet issues earlier. But I guess one of my issues
better be
too.
Back. He's got to stop the stream.
Yeah. Well, until then, we're still talking. So that's all good. But one of the issues I guess I have too is when he's fighting, when Kane is the final villain as the robot. I didn't feel like he made any decisions that was unique to him, like that separated him from a robot, other than his connection to the chick when he kills her. Other than that, he's just like Robocop's just fighting a robot who's just kind of shooting people. There wasn't any. It wasn't like he's fighting another person who's gone through the same thing he did or anything. Like there's no.
Well, I think that's kind of the point.
There's no question of it. It was just he's fighting a robot that happens to have a human brain, and that was uninteresting to me because that's just a robot again. And it's like, well, I don't know.
Well, he's driven by his. He's still driven in death by his addiction to the nuke.
Yeah,
and so he is technically a machine. That's kind of you see. I get where you're like. I understand you didn't care for it.
Hit hard, I guess. To me, that's just.
But I guess what you are having a problem with is exactly what they're trying to do with the characters. Like he was already a slave to the nuke to begin with. So even as a machine, he's still a slave to the nuke. And at that point, he is nothing of himself anymore. All that's left is the addiction, right? Like it's kind of a deeper thing, but I it's fair. Like a lot of people are not. I'm not going to give you as much shit on this as I am other movies.
I just don't find. I guess I just don't find that interesting for him to.
It's fair
in the finale. Like it just seems like it loses connection, or like
had I seen this movie as an adult, I may not like it as much, but.
Like, they could, like, to me, I guess I see it where they could have made it more layered, where what you can't, like, it's like, what can you do with Robocop? Well, maybe you can't do more specific stuff with him personally, but maybe him see there's another person and a robot thing there. Well, should I just kill this guy who had this forced on him to, like, I don't know. Like, is there any sort of that? Just nope, just not a concept mentioned.
You're thinking way too fucking modern movie, Rook.
Yeah.
You say that like that's a bad thing, though. Like,
well, it's kind of
like a bad concept, though. Like,
I think you're judging this movie by modern standards, is my point. Right? Because all those things that you just said, cool. But guess what? In the 90s and 80s, those were like just kind of underlying things that were there. And I get what you're saying. And that's probably something that may have worked in the script. And I'm not saying you're wrong. But you're like getting way too deep in the weeds on this. And I think you're overthinking RoboCop 2. It's fucking RoboCop 2. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's not quality though, so that's why
I get where you're coming from, and I guess I just couldn't honestly. I would think it would me, and this is just me, and I was an executive listening to your pitch right now. I'll be like, okay, so you're gonna bring our fucking robot fighting robot action movie to a goddamn halt in the middle of the fight because Murphy's going to have some crisis over killing some guy because he can relate to him because he's a living guy inside of a fucking robot. No, this guy's killed a bunch of fucking people and cut him up in pieces. Let them fight. Jesus Christ. That's what I'd say to you. I'd be like, okay, what movie do you think you're fucking making here?
There's more trying to make it more interesting in terms of morality. Maybe.
To a point, I get where you're coming from, Rookie, but like, oh my God, dude.
Because listen to this. So when you say it's like these two robot guys are fighting, I'm like, so Transformers is top tier quality all the time?
No, that's not even.
Oh, God.
No, now you're taking it. No,
I don't know.
Okay,
oh,
okay, now you're taking it way too far. Here's the difference, okay? Here's the difference. Also, if I was making a fucking Transformer movie and you came to me with that, I'd say the same goddamn thing. I'd be like, 6-year-olds don't give a shit. They just want to see them fight. Look, make your own movie with that.
It's RoboCop for 6-year-olds or for adults.
Did I not just say? And you were smart enough to pick up on the fact that yes, the whole thing with RoboCop and him not saying bad or not killing people and all this other shit. That list of things, yes, that was a list of things that gripes that Orion got from parents' letters.
I got that.
Absolutely, 100%. You got that 100%. And this was their way of saying, yeah, we heard you. Fuck off. And then they're like, shit, now we got to make more money. So all those things that they said in the last one, bring that list back. We got to do that for part 3. And they fucked it up.
Well, because it's just like, to me, I don't know. It's one of those things where this is the type of fight scene that I don't want to watch again. It's like, I'm glad that they did their stop motion. I
would watch this movie just to watch the fucking fight scene. There's the separation in the generations right there.
Because to me, it's just kind of like, fighting
Not to me. I guess
it's just like I don't know. I'm not getting compared.
I mean, I will agree with you that the Transformer movies.
So compared to let me compare. So Terminator, I feel like the way that they do their action is far more compelling when you have these two robot guys fighting each other. And the ones that aren't even human, they're not even human. The way that they do everything and progress the battles, I think, is more engaging and interesting than the way they're doing it here. I don't know. They're just robots shooting each other. And until one of them finally can't do it anymore. That's just not that interesting.
I mean, look, I get where you're coming from by comparing it to Transformers, but I will not sink to the point. Here's my point in this. When I'm watching a Transformer movie, by the time I get to the fights, I have no idea who's doing what if they're not Optimus Prime or Bumblebee. Because they all look the fucking same.
Designs are so crap.
And the fights get so over the top, like whatever. I know what's going on in this, and I guess fair enough that it doesn't. I mean, if I was, and I just said earlier, like if I was judging this by today's standards and watching it today and never having seen it as an adult, I may have a lot of the same reactions you did. I guarantee you, as a father now, I would totally have much different reaction to this film if I had seen it as an adult. And I'm not saying I would hate it but I would just see it as a little.
I'm not saying I hate it either. I'm just saying I don't think it's that great either.
But I guess you're I guess what you're expecting out of the movie, but at the same time to also compare it to something as trashy as Transformers, and not just because I think
I'm just saying the concept of the fight scene.
Let me finish real quick. You're actually trying to compare something that is made for 6-year-olds to something that was made for everybody, even though 6-year-olds are going to think it's cool because, right? Like, see, to me, that's the difference, right? Because Robocop 2 is still on this level. Sure. Is it a fucking 10 out of 10 like the first Robocop? Fuck no, I'm never going to agree with that. Like, no, it's 7 or 8 out of best, at 10 out of best. But it's still got a lot of concepts. It's still up in that upper region, and it's directed by the guy who made Empire Strikes Back, the greatest Star Wars movie of all time.
If Robocop 1 is a 10, then Robocop 2 to me is more like a 6 or 7.
And that's what I just said. It's a 7 or 8, right? But like, here's that slight separation between you're like treating it like it's almost Transformers type trash.
No. So you're saying like I'm not saying you're misinterpreting what I'm saying.
I guess, but I mean, I made my point already. So yeah,
my point was the fighting, the fight scene specifically of like robots fighting each other. Like there wasn't anything unique about. There wasn't any back and forth or anything. There's just like
how much do you think we've seen like that though before that though, Rook? And I hate using that argument, but seriously. Like how much of that stuff do you think
80s,
we had never?
The 80s was full of stuff. Star Wars has already come about. There's been, I feel like
the closest we had to that was him versus Ed 209, brother. Like you got.
It's like I'm thinking of like the Predator versus Arnold Schwarzenegger's interesting too. Like that was, and there's not even that much action in their fight, but that's like a better example. That's cool. Kids probably thought that was cool, right? Like I don't know. I don't know why they'd have. How many repeats of RoboCop 2 are there like with this type of fight scene that's good? Or just two robots just fighting each other.
Here's the thing though, you're talking two humanoid robots. And honestly, I mean, to me personally, I find visually more entertaining the go motion, Phil Tippett's go motion in RoboCop and RoboCop 2 of the two robot battles. I give
that more praise compared to like Transformers.
Then to me, even in the Terminator and Terminator 2, like I love them, don't get me wrong, but I think the only time that I feel like I'm actually seeing a robot is when the Terminator's completely stripped down of all. It's at the end of the first Terminator. Like I honestly, one of the main reasons why I'm not one of the few people who won't say that Terminator 2 is better than Terminator 1 is because I didn't think that the Liquid Terminator was all that great. He's okay, but he feels like such a unbelievable threat at certain points. Like it's okay, like are we ever going to be able to get to this technology? Now you're really taking it to the extreme to where like, okay, now I would even accept and understand the nanotechnology they have in whatever it was, the 5th or 6th one that John Connor has. That makes a little bit more sense than the liquid stuff to me. That's just a minor gripe.
It's implied that the machines somehow.
But again, when I see that, what I'm seeing is I'm not seeing a robot versus robot fight. is my point. I'm seeing it more as kind of not the same way you are, I guess. So I don't know. I see the comparison, and it's a fair comparison.
I guess part of it is that even though they lack a lot of personality shows in them, and then with this, it's just we should. I feel like we should be getting something more out of RoboCop, even if it's not. Oh my gosh, should I save him? I feel like if there's something else going on in their fight that requires his attention. I don't know all the specifics that would make it better, but I'm just saying it just felt like a lame fight. It was just.
I get, and I mean, I see where you're coming from, and that's kind of the place where a director or a writer would try to make the fight mean more than it is, and that's where I was coming from.
Or if it was cut down in half, I wouldn't see it as that much of a problem. It was just it felt drawn out. That was why I compared it to Man of Steel.
I don't see the draw of it. Like, I don't feel like it's drawn out as you did, maybe, but that's just maybe the difference in the generations and how we viewed the film the first time, perhaps.
Possibly. I mean, if it's just sticking to standards of its time frame, that's fine. But then that's one of the things where I'd say, well, and it's not as timeless as we say. If we're just adhering to
RoboCop 2 is not as well beloved and not as timeless.
Does stand the time. RoboCop 2.
See, to me, RoboCop 2 though is more like RoboCop 2 is one of those movies where people think it's this B-level, schlocky, grindhouse kind of movie. When you actually sit down and watch it, it's a lot more than that, right?
Well, I would describe it as like a smarter. Go ahead.
Well, and it's a satire and all that stuff. Part 2, on the other hand, is a lot of those things I just said on purpose, right? Like it's like RoboCop 2. We're not going to pretend anymore that because we're doing RoboCop 2, right? Like, I mean, they're like Kirshner is not pretending that he's reinventing the wheel. He's not acting like he's making The Godfather 2. You know what I mean? He knows exactly what he's fucking making. Because like a lot of even Verhoeven, like many directors, took one look at the title and threw the fucking script in the garbage the first time out, right? But in this case, Kirshner knew what he was getting into. He knew he could not top the first RoboCop. So what he did was he worked with what there was. The writing, it could have used a better draft. I'm not going to deny you that. There are certain things that could have been punched up more. But I mean, if you'd have had this whole idea of like Murphy having a conflict of fighting with, Kane at the end, trying to like, like Kane, we can talk this through, like kind of I just think it would have stopped.
Maybe what I'm so when I say that type of thing, I'm just working with what they showed. But what they could have also done is have it be more of RoboCop wanting to go against OCP in some way, or that division, because that like at the end even like it's just kind of like, oh well, he's just gonna go scot-free, and
OCP comes in more in the third film.
And maybe I feel it would have been a better conclusion to this one compared to fighting Kane. Then is what I'm getting at too. But I don't know. What was I going to say? So
because then I also got to compare this to Part 3, which actually has a humanoid robot that he fights, and it fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's bad.
Well, they can suck, but doesn't mean that the versions would suck with it. But
I mean, it's really what I mean. Dumb.
So, the way you just said, like that they're like it's RoboCop 2. Like, and they throw the scripts at them, like you say, like expecting it's not good. So that just seems weird to me. Like, if you're ever going to do a sequel, I feel like even if you're not trying to top the best or top the one before, like, because it just makes me think, like, so any writers like for The Empire Strikes Back or The Two Towers or anything, I don't know. It just comes off like, well, it's the sequel. It should.
Well, The Two Towers was never a sequel. It was all part of the same story. But
have you not seen Scream 2 when they talk about that? Trilogies
this movie, Scream 2 explains like, this movie, dude. I get where you're coming from.
And actually, is like you don't give a shit about them, or like the writers don't give a shit about writing a sequel.
It is and isn't the same. It's okay.
Don't really get that.
Rook. Okay, it's a difference in the era. It's a completely different time. Like everybody did not like Godfather 2. Exception to the fucking rules. Okay? Like nobody ever expects the sequel to be any better. They know the audience doesn't expect it to be any better. They rarely tried to actually go too far off with the story and get real inventive because they knew that if they went too far from the mothership, they would piss people off. Kind of like today. But they don't give a fuck. But then they actually knew that. So what they would try to do is bring some new shit to the table, but not change shit too much. But the whole appeal of doing a sequel then was, okay, we get to see the same kind of movie, but now they're actually going to get some money, right? Like that's the difference. And that's what Robocop 2 is showing off, is the fucking money they spent on this movie compared to the first movie. And it's giving the audience more of what they expect, but bigger and twice as much. See, that's the way all sequels were back then. Die Hard 2 is a perfect example of this. To the point where they're so tied into Christmas being the fucking day where you literally have the scene where McClane has to say, how can the same shit happen to the same guy on the same day twice?
Yeah.
I don't find that hard to do either.
See, I get you, brother. I get you. We all felt the same way about certain ones of these sequels, and I can't argue. I give this movie about the same rating you do. But the difference is, to me, Robocop 2 is a better one of those compared to a Die Hard 2, which a lot of other people think.
I would agree. I would agree with that, because Die Hard 2
to me,
just inserts him where he does not need to be in the story at all.
And I love the cast in Die Hard 2. I love the people. If it would have taken place any other day but fucking Christmas, I probably, because it makes no fucking sense that it takes place at Christmas.
Well, yeah, and just the way that he's in the plot, he's forcing himself in the plot.
He is very forced into that plot. Yes,
I don't know, something about that.
That always shut down the argument with Christmas on that, because first of all, why the fuck would you move a very important criminal on the most busiest fucking traffic day in the world? It just wouldn't fucking happen.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck what the circumstances are. They'd be like, this shit can wait a day.
Let's transport convicts through the biggest parade ever or something.
Exactly.
That's probably not the best idea.
Let's just make this all difficult on us. So they're having a big parade downtown where they shut down all these fucking streets. Let's fucking remove a fucking important goddamn terrorist. Let's do it. Fuck it.
Right.
On Christmas, nobody's doing nothing.
Right.
I know, but yeah, no, this movie, I get you.
I think it's funny. We do kind of land. It's funny how we land around the same ranking for it. I feel like we feel differently about it, and I'm more convinced to lower it. You're more convinced.
I think you'll understand or enjoy more sequels from the 80s and 90s and the 70s somewhat if you kind of go in with the mentality, knowing, Rook, that in this 9 times out of 10, they did not try to deviate too much. They just tried to give you more of the same, but bigger and more intense. Right, like that's pretty much what sequels were back then.
Predator 2 felt like, kind of like you know the Predator. That's the same, but it's totally different environment, totally different type of.
Well, and they would do that sometimes, right? Like
that felt like that's in the same era of sequels.
But that's an urban jungle instead of a jungle, right? And RoboCop 2 takes a lot of the same premises as first one, but instead of having Clarence Bardaker be this badass whatever, he's this little kid this time. Right?
Yeah, which the little kid angle was such a good idea, though, and the little baseball team being like the looters. That was, if anything, I kind of wish there was more of the like children thieves in the.
They would never make this movie now.
The cop would you can't when she was holding up the kids. I was
Do you know how much shit they got for this movie, dude?
At the kids, like I thought he was gonna almost kill her with a malfunction or something.
Siskel and Ebert,
that was
took 5 minutes out of the show to fucking chastise this movie. Like they went hardcore at it. They're like, and Ebert was so offended.
I can see that
by them using a child as the bad guy.
Kid though.
He was so offended, and we're all like, dude, you just do not get it, do you?
Yeah.
It's just like the horror movies, man. You're just never going to get it. Never going to get it. But in a way, like, that's the reaction all the parents were having. You got to understand, my mom hated this fucking movie. That's what made me love it even more. It's like, my mom don't like it. That means there's got to be something good about it.
Right, something good with it. But was she okay with the first film?
Oh, yeah, for the most part. But, I mean, she didn't like the violence. She didn't like the blood. She definitely didn't like the nudity.
It was a lot more
She felt it had
in the
way too much. So basically when it finally came on, see, this is what my mom would like. She didn't really stop us from watching stuff, but now if it was a movie she would be completely out of our range, like no. But like RoboCop, she knew there was no way she was going to stop us from seeing that. Rambo, Terminator, that kind of, like Terminator was one of the ones she did not allow me to see the first Terminator until the second movie was almost about to come out. And she let me watch it the first time on television because that was her thing. Like, she was fine with the TV versions because she knew they'd cut them out.
They usually cut
like,
it's already edited version.
Yeah, so like she would love it when the TV version would come on because then she'd know I'd record it, or she'd make sure we get it recorded because then that way she didn't have to fucking rent the R-rated cut anymore.
Right.
And then when we got HBO, that made shit worse because
the different versions are
a whole new game, a whole new ball game then. But of course, by that point, I was already damn near a teenager, 9, 10, 11, 12. So like, yeah, at that point, it was like, what if she didn't give a shit? I was kind of regulating whatever the fuck I wanted to watch. Yeah. But at that point, it was like, you know, also we weren't wusses and raised in a way like I, at that point, was already getting myself up for school, getting my kid brother up for school, feeding him, feeding myself. Yeah. Clothing us, getting us out the door and to the bus on time and all that business, to where it's like if I wanted to stay up and watch Child's Play, that's my fucking fault. Right. And if I didn't get, I would be the one who'd be in trouble the next. Exactly. So it's like I knew how to regulate what I was watching. I mean, and most shit I could watch without a problem.
Yeah,
there was a few things here and there that would still get to me up to a point, but like once I kind of knew how the bread was made or whatever you want to call it, the bologna was made or whatever, like. Then it just became like whatever. I can watch just about any fucking movie now. Either I just don't like it because of the context, or I just don't like an actor or whatever, some aspect about it. But it's like it's not normally going to be about some kind of something that happens in the movie unless it's definitely exploitation of children in a way that's clearly to like a Cuties kind of situation, let's say.
Yeah.
A cat just brought in a moth and is now playing with its body. It's
good job, kitty. Doing his
struggling for life.
My fucking lazy ass cat sitting right here. He ain't moved in like 4 hours.
That's her third moth in the last 3 days. She's come every day. She's brought in a moth the last few days.
I got him flying around, and my fucking cat just looks at him like, "You're fucking fired. That's your job. Get that somewhere."
She likes to her their toys. She'll bring them in.
Fired so many times. The one time I seen a mouse in this house, I seen the motherfucker run right across this path. I'm like. You are fucking fired. Fuck. Like, that is your job. You have one fucking job in this house. One.
Now, my cat will bring in live birds. Will bring in like she's a great hunter, and unfortunately, she never kills them. She'll bring them in alive, and then
like fucking 3 days later, he comes in the fucking room with the goddamn thing in his mouth, and it ain't dead. He's playing with it. He lets it go, and it runs the fuck off. And I'm like trying to catch the bastard. I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me? I'm doing your fucking job."
It's a fun toy to them. They don't want to kill it. It's a fun toy to play with.
I feed you, and we have one fucking. And I clean up your shit, and we have one fucking deal. One, you kill anything that flies around or runs around. That's it.
No,
you can't even fucking do that. The dog barks at every goddamn thing that moves. She overdoes her job. He doesn't do a goddamn thing. He just sits around. Look, he's looking at me now like, what are you fucking griping about? I was fucking sleeping. I was taking my pre-bedtime nap, and you're over here fucking screaming about me and shit.
That's funny.
I just went back to sleep.
That's good. That's good. But yeah, so I like our different perspectives here for Robocop 2. I don't know what the chat thought of this.
I'm kind of surprised you didn't like it more. I thought you would.
I didn't hate it. I'd say that it's over. It's not mid. It's above mid. It's
considering how much you liked the first one. I thought you would have had a lot of fun with it.
I like the first half a lot more. Like it's just funny. Like, oh, the Amazon's on fire. That's fun. But they always bitch about that kind of stuff. Whatever. And then they like show all the different thieves robbing from each other in the place. How shitty it is. They blow the fuck out of the cop car, and then he just walks up and shoots them. I did kind of like too. They're like, he just shoots everybody. Why doesn't he talk to him? And it's like, you don't have time for this. And he does that to the dead body. You're under arrest, sir. And
I do find it funny. I do find it funny because you didn't like Gremlins all that well, and even though you said you didn't like Gremlins 2 that much, you talked like high about Gremlins 2.
By the end, I realized that I phrased it incorrectly at the beginning when I was like, it's not as bad. It was like, no, I liked Gremlins 2, but there were still things I was working out with it, like what I liked and didn't like and whatnot. So throughout our discussion, I landed on a more positive view on Gremlins.
More positive on Gremlins 2 than you did 1, and then you
did.
Yeah.
So. But with this, I at least understand what you guys. I had no idea what people thought about RoboCop 2. In fact, I assumed people just wouldn't like it because sometimes ones aren't.
We talked about RoboCop 2 before because I brought this on on one episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. And like I said earlier, RoboCop 2, I didn't think much of it up until the third act is where I kind of liked it a little bit more. I know you'll disagree with me there, Rook, but I've only seen RoboCop 2 once. It's not as rewatchable compared to the first.
I mean, I'm giving it like a 6 or 7 out of 10. That's still pretty good. Like, because
that's pretty much what I'd give it, but I don't like.
Our reasons are all different for why.
You're like the way you're. I hate to say. I mean, this may not be the right word to use, but the way you're like bitching about it is not what I would say.
That's fine.
Yeah, but you're Rook, so we there's like a standard.
I mean, I'm trying to be consistent with what I think with certain ones, and I am learning different stuff. And I'll admit my taste does change in time, and that's one thing I realized when I watch something a second time that even I maybe watched 5 years ago. Like sometimes I see something differently, and I like because I went from watching maybe a few different new movies a year to I'm making myself watch at least like 50 new movies a year, if not more. And like probably way more actually, and TV shows and stuff. So like I'm getting filled with new stuff all the time, and a variety from today and from the past, from 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, current day, whatever, all these different ones. So yeah, my perspective on stuff might change as we go too with it. If anything, like I've gained a lot more respect for things I already liked. And for some things, and there's some things that I thought I liked, and then watched again and was like, "Fuck that." There's ones that I again thought that I didn't like that I watched maybe 5 years ago and watched again and thought more positively on. So, kind of depends. Depends on what I learn, what I know, and the more I learn about filmmaking too, and that process that informs some of it. That's why, like, even if I don't like RoboCop 2 as much, I appreciate it's like the quality of the film.